Maya Chen had always been the responsible one in her family. At 31, she was a successful pediatric nurse who lived just 20 minutes from her childhood home, making it easy to help care for her aging father, Thomas, who had been battling early-stage dementia for the past 2 years. Her younger brother Jake, 27, lived across the country in California, pursuing his dream of becoming a screenwriter while working various odd jobs to make ends meet. When their father's condition began requiring more intensive care, Maya naturally stepped up. She visited him 3 times a week, managed his medications, coordinated with his doctors, and handled most of his daily needs. Thomas still lived independently in the family home, but Maya knew that wouldn't last forever. The tension began when Maya suggested it might be time to start looking into assisted living facilities. "Dad's getting worse," Maya explained to Jake during one of their weekly video calls. "Yesterday he forgot to turn off the stove, and last week I found him wandering the neighborhood at midnight in his pajamas. I'm worried about his safety." Jake's response was immediate and defensive. "You're being dramatic, Maya. Dad has good days and bad days. He doesn't need to be locked up in some facility." "I'm not talking about locking him up," Maya said patiently. "I'm talking about getting him the professional care he needs. There are beautiful places that specialize in memory care. He'd have activities, socialization, and trained staff." "Easy for you to say," Jake shot back. "You want to ship him off so you don't have to deal with him anymore." Maya was stunned by the accusation. She had been the one dealing with everything while Jake pursued his dreams 3,000 miles away. But she bit her tongue, knowing that Jake was probably feeling guilty about his absence. What Maya didn't know was that someone else had been influencing Jake's perspective. Their father's neighbor and longtime friend, Helen Morrison, had been spending increasing amounts of time with Thomas. Helen was a widow in her late 60s who had known the family for over 20 years. She had always been kind and helpful, and Maya initially appreciated her presence in her father's life. But Helen had her own agenda. She had been lonely since her husband's death 5 years earlier, and Thomas's company filled a void in her life. More importantly, Thomas had mentioned to Helen that he was worried about his finances and had been considering updating his will to ensure both his children would be taken care of. Helen saw an opportunity. If Thomas moved to a care facility, she would lose her companion and the comfortable arrangement they had developed. She also knew that Thomas, in his confused state, had been talking about leaving the house to whoever took the best care of him in his final years. So Helen began a subtle campaign to turn Jake against Maya's suggestions. "Your sister called again today," Helen would tell Thomas during her daily visits. "She seems very interested in talking about your finances and the house. I hope she's not pressuring you about anything." When Jake called to check on their father, Helen would often answer the phone. "Oh, Jake, I'm so glad you called," she would say. "Your father has been so upset after Maya's visits. She keeps pushing him to move out of his home. The poor man gets so agitated. He keeps saying he just wants to stay in his house where he's comfortable." Helen's reports to Jake became increasingly dramatic. Maya was pressuring their father about money. Maya was trying to convince him to sign papers. Maya was making him anxious and confused with talk about moving. Jake, already feeling guilty about his physical absence and defensive about his life choices, began to believe Helen's version of events. During his calls with Maya, he became increasingly hostile. "Dad told me you've been upsetting him with all this talk about moving," Jake accused during one particularly tense conversation. "He said you keep bringing up his will and asking about his finances." Maya was confused. "Jake, I've never asked Dad about his will. I only talk about finances when it comes to his medical care and daily expenses. And I only mention assisted living because I'm genuinely worried about his safety." "That's not what Helen says," Jake replied. "She's been there for Dad every day while you're trying to ship him off to some institution so you can get your hands on the house." The accusation hit Maya like a physical blow. "Is that really what you think of me? That I'm some kind of vulture waiting for Dad to die so I can inherit his house?" "I don't know what to think anymore," Jake said. "All I know is that Dad is upset after your visits, and Helen is the only one who seems to actually care about what he wants." Maya tried to defend herself, but Jake had already made up his mind. Their weekly calls became arguments, and eventually, Jake stopped taking Maya's calls altogether. Meanwhile, Helen's influence over Thomas grew stronger. She began staying at the house for longer periods, sometimes overnight when Thomas was particularly confused. She cooked his meals, managed his medications, and gradually took over many of the responsibilities Maya had been handling. "You're so lucky to have Helen," Thomas would tell Maya during her visits. "She's been such a blessing. Not like some people who just want to put me in a home." Maya realized that her father was being influenced against her, but she didn't know the extent of Helen's manipulation. She tried to talk to Jake about her concerns, but he refused to listen. "Helen is a saint," Jake told her. "She's taking care of Dad out of the goodness of her heart while you're trying to get rid of him. Maybe you should be more like her instead of being so selfish." The situation reached a breaking point when Maya arrived at her father's house one afternoon to find Helen sitting at the kitchen table with Thomas, papers spread out in front of them. "Oh, Maya," Helen said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Your father and I were just discussing some legal matters. Perhaps you should come back another time." Maya looked at the papers and saw that they were documents related to power of attorney and will modifications. "Dad, what's going on here?" Maya asked gently. Thomas looked confused and agitated. "Helen says I need to update some papers. She says you want to take my house away." "Dad, I would never take your house away. I just want you to be safe and happy." "That's what Helen said you'd say," Thomas replied, his voice taking on a stubborn tone Maya hadn't heard before. Maya's heart sank as she realized how deeply Helen had manipulated her father's perception of her motives. That evening, Maya called Jake, desperate to make him understand what was happening. "Jake, please listen to me. Helen had Dad signing legal documents today. I think she's trying to manipulate him into changing his will or giving her power of attorney." "You're being paranoid," Jake dismissed. "Helen has been nothing but helpful. You're just upset because someone else is taking care of Dad and you can't control everything anymore." "This isn't about control," Maya shouted, her patience finally snapping. "This is about Dad being manipulated by someone who has her own agenda. She's isolating him from his family and making him think we don't care about him." "We?" Jake laughed bitterly. "You mean you? I care about Dad, which is why I support Helen taking care of him instead of you shipping him off to die in some facility." Maya hung up the phone and cried harder than she had since her mother's death 10 years earlier. She felt completely alone and helpless, watching her father being manipulated while her brother refused to see the truth. But Maya wasn't ready to give up. She decided to do some research on Helen and discovered some troubling information. Helen had been involved in a similar situation with another elderly neighbor several years earlier. That neighbor, a widower named Frank, had suddenly changed his will to leave Helen a significant portion of his estate before dying unexpectedly. Frank's adult children had contested the will, but Helen had ultimately kept the inheritance. Maya also discovered that Helen had significant financial problems. She had been behind on her mortgage payments and had several outstanding debts. Thomas's house and savings would solve all of her financial problems. Armed with this information, Maya tried once more to reach Jake. This time, she sent him everything she had found about Helen's history and financial situation. "Jake, please look at this information. Helen has done this before. She's a predator who targets vulnerable elderly people." Jake's response was swift and cruel. "You're sick, Maya. You're so desperate to get Dad's money that you're making up conspiracy theories about a woman who's been nothing but kind to our family. I'm done with you. Don't contact me anymore." Maya felt like her family was falling apart. Her father was being manipulated, her brother hated her, and she seemed powerless to stop what was happening. But help came from an unexpected source. Dr. Patricia Williams, Thomas's geriatrician, called Maya with concerns about her father's recent behavior and medication compliance. "Maya, your father missed his last 2 appointments, and when I called to check on him, someone named Helen answered his phone and said she was handling his medical care now. I'm concerned because Thomas's medications require careful monitoring, and I'm not comfortable with someone other than family managing his treatment." Maya explained the situation to Dr. Williams, who listened with growing concern. "This sounds like elder abuse," Dr. Williams said firmly. Financial exploitation of elderly people with dementia is unfortunately common. I think we need to involve adult protective services. Maya hesitated. She didn't want to create more family drama, but she knew her father's well-being was at stake. Dr. Williams, is there any way to document what's been happening? I'm afraid my brother won't believe me without concrete evidence. Dr. Williams suggested that Maya request copies of any legal documents Helen might have encouraged Thomas to sign. She also recommended installing a security camera system in Thomas's house to monitor his care and interactions. Maya felt uncomfortable about the surveillance, but she was desperate to protect her father and prove to Jake what was really happening. With Dr. Williams's help, Maya was able to get a court order requiring Helen to provide copies of any legal documents she had assisted Thomas with signing. What they discovered was worse than Maya had imagined. Helen had convinced Thomas to sign over power of attorney to her, change his will to leave her the house and half of his savings, and even add her name to his bank accounts. All of these documents had been signed during times when Thomas was particularly confused and agitated. Maya also discovered that Helen had been withdrawing money from Thomas's accounts for her own expenses, including her mortgage payments and credit card bills. The security cameras revealed Helen's true behavior when she thought no one was watching. She was impatient and sometimes harsh with Thomas, especially when he was confused. She had also been telling him false stories about Maya, saying that Maya had told her she couldn't wait for Thomas to die so she could sell the house. With this evidence in hand, Maya made one final attempt to reach Jake. This time, instead of calling, she flew to California unannounced and showed up at his apartment. Jake, I know you don't want to see me, but you need to look at this evidence. Dad is in danger, and I need your help to protect him. Jake initially refused to let her in, but Maya's desperation was evident. 5 minutes, he said grudgingly. Then I want you to leave. Maya spread out the legal documents, bank statements, and screenshots from the security cameras on Jake's coffee table. Look at this, Jake. Helen has been stealing from Dad. She's manipulated him into signing over his house and his money to her. And look at these videos of how she treats him when she thinks no one is watching. Jake examined the evidence with growing horror. The bank statements showed thousands of dollars being withdrawn for Helen's personal expenses. The legal documents showed Thomas's signature on papers that would leave Helen everything. Most damning were the video clips showing Helen's true behavior, her impatience, her manipulation, and her cruel comments about Thomas's children. Oh my God, Jake whispered. What have I done? I believed her. I actually believed her lies about you. Maya watched as her brother's face crumpled with the realization of how badly he had misjudged the situation. Jake, this isn't your fault, Maya said gently. Helen is very good at manipulation. She targeted Dad because he's vulnerable, and she targeted you because you live far away and feel guilty about not being here. Jake looked up at his sister with tears in his eyes. Maya, I'm so sorry. I said terrible things to you. I accused you of being greedy and selfish when you were the only one actually protecting Dad. We can deal with that later, Maya said. Right now, we need to focus on protecting Dad and stopping Helen. Jake immediately booked a flight back home, and together, the siblings developed a plan to confront Helen and reverse the damage she had done. When they arrived at Thomas's house, they found Helen cooking dinner and acting as if she were the lady of the house. Oh, Jake, Helen exclaimed with false warmth. What a wonderful surprise. Your father will be so happy to see you. Actually, Helen, we need to talk, Maya said firmly. We know what you've been doing. Helen's expression immediately became defensive. I don't know what you mean. I've been taking care of your father while you've been trying to put him in a home. Jake stepped forward, his voice steady but angry. We have evidence, Helen. Bank statements showing you've been stealing Dad's money. Legal documents you manipulated him into signing. Video footage of how you really treat him. Helen's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Your father asked me to help him with his finances. Dad has dementia, Maya said. He can't make these kinds of decisions, and you know it. You've been taking advantage of a vulnerable elderly man. Thomas appeared in the doorway, looking confused by the tension in the room. What's going on? He asked. Helen, Why does everyone look upset? Jake knelt down beside his father's chair. Dad, we need to talk to you about some things Helen has been helping you with. Some legal papers and financial matters. As they showed Thomas the documents, his confusion was evident, but moments of clarity broke through. I don't remember signing this, he said, looking at the will modification. Helen, you said this was just about medical information. Helen tried to maintain her innocence, but when faced with the video evidence of her true behavior and the bank statements showing her theft, she finally broke down. You don't understand, she sobbed. I was going to lose my house. I needed help, and Thomas said he wanted to take care of people who took care of him. So you decided to manipulate a man with dementia and steal his life savings? Jake asked incredulously. The siblings immediately contacted the police and Adult Protective Services. Helen was arrested for elder abuse and financial exploitation. All of the legal documents she had manipulated Thomas into signing were invalidated by the court. In the weeks that followed, Maya and Jake worked together to ensure their father received proper care. They found an excellent memory care facility that specialized in dementia patients, and Thomas adjusted well to the structured environment and professional care. Jake took a leave of absence from his job in California to spend time with his father and help Maya with the transition. During this time, he and Maya had many difficult conversations about the events of the past year. I owe you more than an apology, Jake said one evening as they sat in Thomas's new room, watching him participate in an art therapy session. I abandoned you when you needed support, and I believed lies about you instead of trusting the sister who has always been there for our family. Maya was quiet for a moment before responding. Jake, I was hurt by what you said and how you refused to listen to me. But I also understand that Helen was very good at manipulation. She told you exactly what you needed to hear to turn you against me. That's not an excuse, Jake said firmly. I should have known better. I should have trusted you. Over the following months, the siblings worked to rebuild their relationship. Jake moved back to their hometown to be closer to Thomas and to help Maya with his care. He found work as a freelance writer, which allowed him more flexibility to be involved in family matters. Thomas's condition continued to decline, but he was well cared for and surrounded by family who loved him. The professional staff at the memory care facility helped him maintain his dignity and quality of life in ways that would have been impossible at home. During one of their visits, Thomas had a moment of clarity and took both of his children's hands. I'm proud of both of you, he said. Maya, thank you for taking such good care of me. Jake, I'm glad you're home. It was one of the last coherent conversations they had with their father, but it meant everything to both siblings. Helen was eventually sentenced to 5 years in prison for elder abuse and financial exploitation. The money she had stolen was recovered and returned to Thomas's estate. The experience taught Maya and Jake valuable lessons about family, trust, and the importance of protecting vulnerable loved ones. They learned that predators often target families that are dealing with stress, guilt, and distance, using those emotions to create division and confusion. Maya's dedication to her father was vindicated, but more importantly, she and Jake emerged from the ordeal with a stronger relationship than they had ever had before. They had learned to communicate better, to trust each other, and to work together as a team. Jake often reflected on how close he had come to losing both his father and his sister due to one woman's manipulation. It was a reminder that family bonds, while strong, require constant nurturing and protection from those who would seek to destroy them for their own gain. 2 years later, when Thomas passed away peacefully in his sleep, Maya and Jake were by his side, holding his hands and telling him how much they loved him. They had protected him from a predator, ensured he received the best possible care, and most importantly, they had protected their family from being torn apart by lies and manipulation. The house that Helen had tried to steal became a symbol of their family's resilience. Maya and Jake decided to sell it and use the proceeds to establish a fund that helped other families dealing with elder abuse and dementia care. Their experience had taught them that family is worth fighting for, that truth always emerges eventually, and that even the strongest bonds can be threatened by those who seek to exploit vulnerability and distance. But it also taught them that love, persistence, and commitment to protecting each other can overcome even the most sophisticated manipulation and deceit.